What's happening, guys? Mr. Rouge here, and today we're talking about questions, hypotheses, and variables. If you remember from the first video, the first step of the scientific method is to make an observation. Based on that observation, we're going to formulate a question. Then we're going to turn that question into a testable hypothesis. Okay? When we make that hypothesis, there's going to be two variables in there, and that's what we're going to introduce and what we're going to measure. We're going to cover that right now. So first, we're going to go over how do we change a question into a hypothesis, the independent and dependent variable, and how do we identify the independent and dependent variables in the hypothesis. Okay. So first, take a look at each of these hypotheses and tell me, what do they all have in common? If you cover a wound with a bandage, then it will heal with less scarring. If you drop a ball, then it'll fall towards the ground. If you drink coffee before going to bed, then it'll take longer to fall asleep. What do those three hypotheses have in common? Well, if you notice at the very beginning, they all start with the word if. And right about the middle portion, they all have the word then. Most hypotheses are statements in this format. If-then statements, okay? And these statements are based off of questions that we have or questions that we're trying to answer. So let's practice how do we change a question into a testable hypothesis. Well, if I have the question, does dark chocolate lower blood pressure? I would rearrange this question into a statement using the words if and then. So for example, it should sound something like, if I eat dark chocolate, then it will lower my blood pressure. How about this one? Does pollution increase global warming? If people increase their pollution, then global warming will increase. Will I gain muscle if I do push-ups before bed? Again, rearrange this question into a statement using the two words if and then. So it should sound something like, if I do push-ups before bed, then I will gain muscle. Okay? Now, in these experiments and in these hypotheses, there's two variables in there. There's the independent and dependent variable. That's what we're going to cover next. The independent variable is whatever the scientist is experimenting with. So what are they introducing? The dependent variable is whatever the scientist is trying to observe or measure as the outcome. Okay? So let's take this for example. Let's say I have the question, will this new gasoline increase the acceleration of my car? To turn this into a hypothesis, I rephrase it into a statement using the words if and then. If I give my car this new gasoline, then it will increase its acceleration. If and then. Now we need to identify the two variables. The independent variable, I'm going to abbreviate it IV. The independent variable is whatever I'm experimenting with. So based on this hypothesis, what will I be experimenting with? I'm going to be testing a new gasoline. Okay. To identify the dependent variable, I ask myself, what am I going to observe or measure as the outcome? Well, in this case, I'm going to be measuring the acceleration. So this would be the dependent variable. I'm trying to see, does acceleration depend on the gasoline I use? Okay. So, in essence, we're trying to see, does the independent variable influence change in the dependent variable? Please sketch this little slide down, and I hope this makes sense in the next few slides. Okay, so bear with me. Here's another hypothesis. If I play music to my plants, then they will grow taller. My independent variable, what I'm introducing to the plants, or what I'm experimenting with, is music. What am I trying to observe or measure as the outcome? trying to see, do they grow taller? So that's my dependent variable. So in this case, I'm trying to see, does music influence change in growing taller? Here's another example. My hypothesis, if I take aspirin, then my headache will go away. What am I introducing, or what am I experimenting with? It's the aspirin. That's my independent variable. What am I trying to observe or measure as the outcome? If my headache will go away. That's my dependent variable. So for this situation, I'm trying to test, does aspirin influence change in headaches? Take this for example. If you study for 10 minutes a day, then you'll get a better grade. What am I going to do, or what am I going to experiment with? I'm going to experiment with studying. That's my independent variable. What am I going to measure as the outcome? I'm going to measure my grade. That's the dependent variable. So in this situation, does studying influence change in my grade? Okay. Last one. If you sleep for 8 hours a night, then you'll have better health. What am I experimenting with? I'm experimenting with sleep. That's my independent variable. What am I going to measure as the outcome? I'm going to measure my health. So that's my dependent variable. I'm trying to identify, does sleep influence change in my health? Okay? All right, so a quick recap. We went over how to change the question into a hypothesis. The hypothesis must have these two words, if and then. We went over the independent and dependent variable. The independent variable is what am I experimenting with? Experimenting with. The dependent variable is what am I trying to observe or measure? Okay? And lastly, how to identify the independent and dependent variables. Okay? All right, guys, I will catch you all next time, and adios.